Hello, welcome back to Hazel Jane Tarot, and today I am going to be sharing with you all the new decks that came into my collection in the second half of 2021. So I did previously film my new decks, new Oracle and Tarot decks as two separate videos for the first half of the year, and I'll link that below. So in the first half of the year I actually got 18 new decks, including Oracle and Tarot, but in the second half of the year there have been a lot fewer new decks coming in. So let's have a wee look at what I got. So first of all, you'll have maybe seen this recently. This is one of the new tarot decks, and it is Le Tarot Noir. So as you can see, it's huge, it's gilded, and it's a Marseille inspired deck. So I got this when I was learning to read pips back in September, and I really enjoyed working with it. I am working on bringing a video soon. I'll be filming it soon, looking at all the decks I used through the whole of the year. I want to go through my collection and sort of divide it up into the ones I used this year and the ones I didn't, and then have a think about which ones that I used that I used maybe more than others, or with some I only used for one or two readings. And this is one that I used quite a lot because I was using it to study with, and then I did a bunch of practice readings with it. This has got quite a lot of use, and as you can see, like, the edges are already starting to get a bit dinged up. But yeah, so this is the Le Tarot Noir, and it's a mass market deck. It's available, it's a French deck obviously, but it's available on Amazon UK. So yep, so there's a full review of that on my channel as well, or like a walkthrough and so on my channel from back in September, October. So let's continue with tarot. So a few other tarot decks that I got in the second half of the year. One was this Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian. This is another mass market deck. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't really used this very much at all, which is kind of odd considering my reaction to it when I first got it. So that's the wee guidebook, which is pretty good. There were alternative versions of a few of the traditionally darker cards, and you could pick which one you wanted to use, and there are actually different meanings in the book for the different versions of those cards, which I thought was an interesting touch. So the I don't know, the Tarot of the Abyss, sometimes I feel like decks are named strangely, because this Tarot of the Abyss sounds like a really dark deck, dark in terms of theme. This is really only dark in terms of colour palette, I feel. It's a really gorgeous deck, and I don't know why I haven't used it more. When I initially got it and flicked through it, it really took my breath away, to the point that I thought it was so beautiful. I was like, why would I ever need to buy any more tarot decks? Because look how beautiful this one is, and the images are very evocative. And even though there are some animal images, it doesn't bother me that much. As you may know, I don't normally work very much with animal decks. But because this is a mixture of some animal cards and some human cards, kind of like the Gaian Tarot has that mix as well, that's fine for me. I mean, and it's so evocative. Like, look at the person standing guard against the darkness. So the darkness brings out the mood of the card even more than the sort of the Rider-Waite-Smith image. So yeah, I mean, this is a great deck. So I would like to use this a lot more and really get to know it properly. I just haven't done so yet, and I can't really say any particular reason why. I suppose I got other things, and I'm contemplating not getting very many new decks next year, to be honest, to try to give myself more of a chance to really work with all these new things that I've got. So this is another new deck I got in the second half of the year. This is the R Black Tarot. As you can see, it was a limited print run, and I have done a video on this deck as well. So it didn't come with a book, but it has all these cards, which I think if you're an experienced card reader, you don't really need that. I would have loved a proper book with this deck, because some of the symbols used in the cards are really interesting and they haven't been explained necessarily. So it's a really kind of, R Black's a graphic artist, and does sort of promotional posters for bands and all sorts of different things, and book covers. So that graphic art style is not something I would normally go for, but I watched this being created on Instagram and loved the images, thought they were very powerful. So I couldn't wait to order this. And if you're familiar with this deck, there was like you had to order by email, you had to order at a particular time. And I really did make an effort to make sure I got a chance to order it. Look at that. So beautiful. I love positive depictions of breastfeeding. There's so few of them in our culture anywhere. So there's a couple of tarot decks I have that have this type of image, and it's lovely. And it's nice to see it in the Mother of Cups as well. I was in a conversation recently in the comments on someone's video about, you know, that it's only ever the Empress that's shown in those types of images. So it's nice to see another card. Sorry, just grabbing a wee sip of my tea. So yes, so there were some issues with the print quality of this. It is on card that is kind of like maybe artist paper. Lisa would know, Lisa at Lisa Papez, after her in-depth dive into card stock. So I'm not sure, but this, I think if you bent it, it would fold, like it would just crease, and so it feels a bit delicate and soft, and that it needs to be handled with care. The edges are a little bit, as you can see, like a little bit roughly cut. The corners aren't rounded. You know, and for the price of the deck, there was a lot of disappointment that the quality wasn't better, but the actual art and images are just like, look at that, holding each other's hearts. Beautiful. I mean, the art is amazing. So again, this is a deck I haven't used very much. I have found, to me, this deck has, for want of a better way to describe it, a kind of masculine energy, which I like because I have a lot of very feminine decks, like as in literally all female decks. And I found this deck has been pretty good when I've used it for readings on my relationship with my partner. It doesn't look like a lovey-dovey deck, but it sort of seems to tap into that, to his energy a little bit. So yeah, I don't know, I have hardly started using it, so I've still a lot of miles to cover with that deck. And the other tarot deck that I got in the second half of the year is the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelation Edition. And I think this is a good point of contrast with the Our Black Tarot in terms of quality, because price point, they weren't hugely different. If anything, I think the Our Black Tarot might have been slightly more expensive. And the quality of the Revelation Spirit Keepers Tarot is just second to none. And I mean, I have done a walkthrough of this deck before on my channel, so I'll not spend too much time showing the deck, but I mean, look at that. You get the certificate of authenticity and this amazing smell of the anointing oil from the little magnet and little art card. And anyway, and I'm sure you know the book of maps that comes with it that you can print yourself is just enormous. So the gilding is perfect. The cards are just really lovely. And my favorite thing I think about this deck is the sound. So the sound of these cards as they move past each other is just so beautiful. So I've got, I do have the other versions of this deck, so it's not a completely new experience for me, but I do have a lot to learn of the new cultural references that Benadryll's brought in and a lot of the symbolism. So I'm looking forward to really diving into this deck. Sorry, those are all the majors. As you can see, I haven't shuffled it yet. But really diving into this deck and understanding it better in the new year. So those are my new tarot decks. So I think that was only 4. Oh no, I have one more. I have one more new tarot deck that I have forgotten all about. And that is this one, the Good Karma Tarot. Okay, so the Good Karma Tarot I got in a trade. I actually traded the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani for this deck. I'd had the Tarot of the Divine since it came out. I've never really used it. I think I realized that I wasn't working with story-based decks, and that, you know, I liked the stories and I liked the art, but I didn't like to read with the stories, if that makes sense. I have some story-based, mythology-based decks that are Celtic mythology-based. And, you know, as that's my own culture and history, I really want to dive into and get to learn all those stories. I'm open to that, I think, more than with Tarot of the Divine. I wanted to read and was interested in all the different stories from around the world, but I didn't want to have to learn them all in order to work with the tarot deck, if that makes sense. I think that's why I wasn't resonating with it. I'm still not 100% sure, really. I mean, because I love the art of the Tarot of the Divine. So I've kept the book Beneath the Moon so I can enjoy the art and the stories, but I traded the deck. So thank you to the person who traded with me. And I also got an oracle deck in that trade, so I did really well out of that trade, and I'll show you that in a wee minute. So the Good Karma Tarot is another one of those decks that I think is weirdly named, because there's nothing about karma that I can see in the guidebook or the images on the cards. But this is a great beginner deck, I think, especially for a teenage girl. I think that's sort of really the target market of this deck. It is a young deck. It reminds me a little bit of the Believe in Your Own Magic, which is an oracle deck that I traded away. But I love the yellow backs. My daughter's favorite color is yellow, so it sort of reminds me of her in a way. It's a real chunk. Like, I mean, the cardstock's pretty thick. Like, it's quite thick card that they've used for it. And yeah, it's the images are all kind of modern young women. It's got diversity in terms of the kinds of women that are depicted, which is nice. So it would remind me a little bit of the modern witch tarot in that regard. The art style is different, but the kind of vibes of it is sort of similar to the modern witch tarot. There's only a few men depicted, and I sort of feel like they could have put, you know, because they have included some men, so I sort of feel like, and they're mostly in the court cards, I feel like they could have included more men through the whole deck, or yeah, it just feels a bit unbalanced that way. But I feel like this is just the deck I needed at the minute, because it is bright and colourful and sweet and gentle, and you know, it's just you know, it's dark. It's the dark time of the year, and as I'm sure you're feeling it too. Like in the news, in the world, things just feel quite heavy at the moment, and the lightness of this deck has been quite nice to work with. So I've been reading with it. That's such a cool picture. I've been reading with it. I have been enjoying it. I don't know if this is going to be a forever deck for me, but in a way I feel like I should keep this to give to my daughter whenever she's a bit older. That it would it'd be a nice beginner deck. The meanings in the guidebook, what I've read of the guidebook, it's very much aimed at a beginner reader. And so there's nothing much really, I didn't take a lot out of the guidebook, but it would be great as if this was your first deck. Look at that, it's lovely. So yeah, I'll maybe do a full review of this deck properly once I've used it a bit more, but that's the Good Karma Tarot. As I say, not sure if it's the best name for it, but it's a nice tarot deck. So that is 5 new tarot decks, one which was a trade. Oracle decks, I also seem to have 5 new oracle decks, and I'm going to keep going and make this all the one video. So I'll show you this next. So this is the Angel Guide Oracle by Kyle Gray. And I got this in the trade for Tarot of the Divine as well. So the person I traded with was looking to clear some space on her bookcase, and I have ended up with less space on mine as a result, but I am very happy about that. So the Angel Guide Oracle, this is one I had my eye on. It's been on and off my Amazon wish list, so when I saw it for trade, I thought it was a good chance to get it and have a look at it. I have a few other Kyle Gray decks, which I always thought I wouldn't like, but actually have found I do quite like in practice. Like, I like reading with them. And this, I quite liked this when I saw the images online, because it depicts angels, but in a slightly more diverse way than I've seen angels depicted in other decks. So that was appealing. And rather than it being angels named, you know, like the named archangels or anything, it's more like an angel of something kind of thing, and you've got a keyword. So I think this type of oracle deck is usually pretty easy to work with. I have not used this yet at all, so I can't really comment on what it's like to read with, but I do really like the art style of this deck. and compared to, like, there was another angel deck that I got in a trade earlier this year that was more of a traditional style of angel imagery. I prefer this, I think, to that more kind of church art style of that other angel deck. But maybe we can have a look at that when I'm actually going through my whole collection, when I do this sort of review of the decks I've used this year. So yeah, this is nice. I really like it. I think I will use it. The only thing about it is it's very glossy, I don't know if you can hear that, very sticky cardstock. Like, they just stick together, like you could not fan this. So I think it's a deck that would, oh no, you can fan it, there you go. But when you're overhand shuffling, and it is very sticky, and if you try to riffle and push them together, it's very sticky. But yeah, I like the orange. Again, it's like this, it's dark and it's gloomy, and those two decks I got in that trade are bright and vibrant and have almost like yellowy orangey backs. They're very similar. So it's kind of nice and to have something bright coming in at this time of year. So speaking of this time of year, another new deck in the latter part of the year is the Seasons of the Witchy Oracle, which I have done a full walkthrough, unboxing and first impressions of. So again, I'll not say too much about it. This is lovely. I had the Sun Oracle already. I haven't used it that much, to be honest. I haven't been doing a daily card pull from it, but maybe I should start, because this is the time of year to really get the use out of it. However, I have pulled maybe a card. I mean, I've mentioned before that it's sort of fallen out of the way of doing daily card pulls through the course of this year, and instead would maybe pull a card that might sit out for a week or for half a week. And I have been doing that with this, and I found the cards that have come out have every time made me go, because they've said something quite, that sort of cuts to the heart of whatever I was going through at the time. So I think this is a really lovely deck, and I'm definitely going to keep working with it all the way through into January. And then another kind of wintry vibed deck that I got back in August and have been using ever since is the Goddess Love Oracle by Wendy Andrew. I got this when I was in Glastonbury. And you can see from the back design it is lovely and wintry, but not tied to Yule specifically. So this is a deck I've been pulling cards from at bedtime. Again, not every day, but quite frequently. And so I've got a little visitor here. I'm sure you just heard. So the images in this card, this deck are beautiful, and some of them are other seasons like that, you know, looks quite summery, but a lot of the images are very wintry, and there are some like that is quite clearly a depiction of Bridget. But they're just lovely, and this has been a lovely deck to pull cards from at night time, and just to have that sort of nice warm message last thing at night. So I love this. I've been working with it a lot, and I'm going to keep working with it. I have no desire to put it away and replace it with anything else. So another deck which you'll have seen before as well is this Through the Eyes of the Soul by Cheryl Yambach Rose. So earlier in the year I got the Transcendent Journeys Oracle by her as well, but this one I bought in Glastonbury back in August, and I've been using ever since. I absolutely love the back design, it's so beautiful. And yeah, the art in this is just gorgeous. So I have had this sitting out, and I've been pulling cards from it and displaying them. So at end of August, September, October, November, December. It's been out for a long time. Sometimes the messages are a little cryptic, but I usually leave the cards sitting out for a few days, and it will sort of end up having been a really good card pull. And this this card is the one that inspired me to buy the deck in the first place, because that image was framed and on the wall in my hotel room in Glastonbury. So that's why when I saw this deck in the shop, they had one out Now stop that. They had that deck out in the shop and I shuffled it, and when I pulled a card, I pulled that card, which is the image that was hanging in my bedroom in my hotel, so I had to get the deck. So that's Through the Eyes of the Soul by Shirley Ann Rose. Okay, and my last new deck that I got this year is this Fate of the Norns Celtic Tarot, and this was a gift from another lovely member of our tarot community who had got it for review and who passed it on to me, knowing that I love Celtic themed decks. So I have actually filmed a full walkthrough of this that I haven't uploaded yet for some reason, so that is definitely coming if you want to see all the cards in this deck. The art, as you can see, is lovely and kind of has it reminds me of maybe like illustrations on an illuminated manuscript or illustrations from like a book of Celtic fairy tales or something like that. It seems to include a lot of Irish, but also, you know, Welsh and English figures as well. So yes, this is a lovely Celtic deck, and one that I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to use it yet, but certainly there's a lot of beautiful art of figures from Celtic mythology and history to work with in this deck. So that's the Celtic Tarot from Fate of the Norns. So I am going to be bringing a couple more videos before the end of the year. So trying to get to film a video with a toddler in the house is so difficult. So the final word I wanted to say was I'll be filming my top 5 tarot, my top 5 oracle of the year, and the decks I've used through the year, and that's coming soon. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Bye.